Hey, everybody out there in podcast land, what is up? It is time for the 100th episode of the Fortress of Rock podcast here on July the 14th, 2023. I, of course, am the Maestro, Kevin Crane. You are who you are. Not gonna shoot off fireworks, slice up a cake for the 100th episode, but we do have something special in store. Kind of a light week in terms of reviews and news and traveling back in time. So, what we're going to do, and I'll discuss it a little bit more here in a few minutes, is we are going to count down the Maestro's newly revised list of the 100 greatest rock performers of all time. I will give you more details after we cover, of course, the news of the world, our tribute to Freddie Mercury and Queen. First up, of course, Elton John's final live show. Possibly. Took place July the 8th in Stockholm, Sweden. Kind of an interesting choice for the final show on the Goodbye Yellow Brick Road tour. Never got to see Elton John. Kind of disappointed in that respect, but we're going to talk here in a few minutes about another band that I will never get to see live in concert for different reasons. But I've talked about the fact I never got to see Tom Petty. Had a shot, made a bad decision. One of the few times where I blame one of my friends. And of course, he died the next year after missing out on that show. So I'm coming to grips. I'm finding peace in the fact that I will never get to see every single actor performer on my bucket list. But yeah, it would have been nice to see Elton John at least once. Ozzy Osbourne is out of the Power Trip Festival out in Indio, California. Never fear. Replacement has already been named. Judas Priest will take over Ozzy's slot. Of course, we know Madonna has had some kind of mysterious ailment where she was in an ICU with her children by her side. So, of course, Madonna has canceled her North American summer tour, but she does plan to reschedule if you're a Madonna fan. Cheap Trick has added 14 dates in October to their current tour. Cheap Trick is always hit and miss with me. Sometimes they're solid, sometimes not so much. Got a friend who is a Cheap Trick fanatic. He can't stand it when I say that Cheap Trick was one of the worst concerts I ever saw in my life. And I'm not lying, it was. I saw them at the Star Plaza, which is now shut down in Merrillville, Indiana. It was a lazy show, a short show. They basically wanted to get in and out and grab the money as quickly as possible. And my friend hates it when I talk like this about Cheap Trick. But I tell it as it is. And they sucked on that occasion. They sucked big time. But now I've seen them in other spots, opening for Heart, where they were really, really good. But when you're fan equals fanatic, when you're a fan of a band or a performer, You do not want to hear anybody rip on them. It's like me and Van Halen. Don't you dare ever criticize Van Halen in my presence. You will see the evil Maestro come out. Some other tour news. Ted Nugent's farewell tour has begun. Another performer I've never gotten to see solo. I've seen him with Damn Yankees. Never got to see the Nuge solo, though. His farewell tour began just a couple days ago, July the 12th in Florida. And Party Gras, featuring Bret Michaels, Night Ranger, Jefferson Starship, kicked off here recently in Detroit, clocking in at almost 4 hours. We're about 3 weeks away, kids, where you will have my review of Party Gras as the 2023 live Festival of Rock here on the Fortress of Rock officially begins. Now, the final concert news I've got is not something I am happy about sharing. We've talked about the Eagles, and we have talked about the announcement of their farewell tour, The Long Goodbye. And I have had a couple chances to see the Eagles. Ticket prices are ridiculous. They were the first band back in the early 90s that I remember, maybe outside of the Rolling Stones, to break that $100 glass ceiling for bad seats. We're not talking about third row seats. We're talking about nosebleed seats, back row seats at an outdoor venue. So why was I optimistic when tickets went on sale here a couple days ago, again, as we tape on July the 14th, that I would be able to get reasonably priced tickets? Fool that I am. My friends and I said, okay, let's set a ceiling, which you should do, not just with concert tickets, but sporting events, anything. You set a dollar amount, betting, whatever it might be. You set a dollar amount and say, I am not going any further than this amount. We decided, we knew it was going to be expensive. We decided $150 for nosebleeds is what we're looking at. Of course, fees you have to factor in. So we wanted $150 after fees. We figured maybe we could get nosebleeds down in Indianapolis for $130, tack on $20 for fees, get right around that $150 mark. It would set a record for me personally, by far the most I'd ever pay for a concert ticket. I think my previous high was $120 for Bob Seger. Well, Mr. Naive Maestro. I get online here with the pre-sale this past Wednesday, and tickets are just going. I mean, they are going like crazy. I sat in the queue. You guys know how this works. You sit in the queue. If you're lucky enough to be able to get in 5-10 minutes early, get in the queue, get in the waiting room, it went fairly quickly. I was in within 5 minutes. Not bad for the Gainbridge Fieldhouse down in Indianapolis. And then I saw the prices. Oh boy. I could have got nosebleeds for $150. Face value. Face value before Ticketmaster gets its grubby little greedy paws into you. Bad enough Don Henley, and I blame him for this. Glenn Fry is gone. I don't think it's Joe Walsh. I don't think it's Timothy B. Schmidt. Don Henley is the greedy jerk in this whole scenario, along with Ticketmaster and Live Nation. $150 face value for the tickets. So much for that Ticketmaster pledge. We're going to start doing all-in pricing, where you see the complete and total final price of the ticket up front. I guess they haven't implemented that yet, because I just decided, let's see how much tickets are. Grabbed one just for the heck of it, just to see. Because again, they were going fast. I don't think I even would have been able to buy a couple, two, three, even if we had been okay with the price. $187 after taxes and fees for nosebleed seats for the Eagles. $187. Weren't there are places where I could pay that much and be in the front row? There are shows. $187 to sit up in the top ring at the Pacers Arena in Indianapolis. And again, I blame Ticketmaster and Live Nation, because $37 in fees and taxes is garbage. But $150 face value, I blame Don Henley. He's a smarmy, arrogant jerk. So I will never get to see the Eagles on my bucket list. They're off. I am not paying this type of money to see them. This is part of the problem with the world nowadays. First world problem, right? First world problem. Who out there can afford $187 per ticket to go see a rock band? The 1%. That's who. Or the ticket brokers, who are now going to go out and resell these tickets for $500, $600, $1,000. Garbage. All right, in other news, one of the most famous album covers of all time, in my humble opinion, is Appetite for Destruction by Guns N' Roses. Now, the cover of Appetite was supposed to be a tattoo design for Axl, I do believe. The man who designed that tattoo / album cover, that iconic album cover, Billy White Jr., passed away here recently. So, of course, here at the Fortress, pass along our thoughts and prayers to the family and the friends, the GNR family, for Billy White Jr. Well, if you can't afford Eagles tickets and you got some spare change lying around, maybe you can afford to buy 10% of Led Zeppelin's catalog, including trademarks and the name. 10% up for grabs, because Led Zeppelin's former manager, Peter Grant, owned 20% of all of it, the catalog, the trademark, the name. He left 10% each to his daughter and his son, and now his daughter, Helen Grant, is shopping her 10%. Of course, we've talked about how this is a trend out there. Springsteen has sold, Motley Crue has sold, I believe Stevie Nicks has sold. So dig between your couch cushions. Get all those pennies out of that penny jar you've got in your kitchen. You can afford 10% of the Led Zeppelin catalog, can't you? Ha! Sorry. Not like I can either. Then finally here, before we start our 100th anniversary, our 100th episode celebration, one last little tidbit, an odd rock and roll news tidbit. Okay, I have no want, need, or desire to go see Barbie, the movie Barbie. I do admit I like Ryan Gosling as an actor, but this is just, not my cup of tea. Sorry. I'm more of a Mission Impossible Dead Reckoning type of guy. But an interesting song on the Barbie soundtrack. I have not had a chance to track it down and listen to it yet, but supposedly there is a song by Ryan Gosling, ostensibly called I'm Just Ken. Of course, he plays Ken in the movie Barbie. But the guest appearances on the song are what warrant a mention here on the Fortress of Rock. Because two primo top shelf guitarists appear on the song I'm Just Ken. And that would be, of course, the aforementioned Guns N' Roses Slash and Wolfgang Van Halen, who I guess also makes appearances throughout the movie, throwing in some guitar work in the background on the score of Barbie. I will hold off on promising a full review. I'll need to listen to this first. As long as it's not completely and totally embarrassing, we'll probably review it in the coming weeks in breakdown here on the Fortress of Rock. All right, it is time. The 100th episode is here. Let me give you some background. 6 years ago, my daughter and I, she is, again, like me, a phenomenal, knowledgeable music fan, although she is more, of course, modern with her musical tastes. She's only 21, so that would be expected. But she does like some of the classic rock. She's kind of outgrown some of the bands she loved when she was younger. I remember in the car I would put the Who's greatest hits in, and she would love Pinball Wizard and Magic Bus. She inherited my love for Van Halen. Spoiler alert, who number one is on my list. If you didn't see that coming, you definitely have not been listening to any of the past 99 episodes. But my daughter has that passion for music, which I love, and I like to think she got from me. So 6 years ago, 2017, she kind of poked the bear. She said, Dad, I'm curious, who are your 40 greatest rock performers of all time? I said, I know kind of who the top 5 or 6 are, but I've never really sat down and thought about the rest of it. So let me do that. So I started off working on my top 40 back in 2017. It expanded because 40 wasn't enough. So I moved it up to 60. Then I moved it up to 90. And now for the 100th episode of the Fortress of Rock, I am going to present to you my newly expanded, newly reordered, up-to-date, current top 100 rock performers of all time. Of course, I am not going to give you details on a vast majority of the list. Just going to run through them, but I will stop and editorialize at times. Of course I will. And this does not affect the rest of the show in terms of we will have some new songs to review on Breakdown. We will go back in time with Doc Brown and the DeLorean, and we will discuss new music coming up in the future on Wrap It Up. But I thought this would be a little fun way to celebrate the 100th episode of the Fortress of Rock. Now, the last thing I'm going to say before we get into the first part of the list. This is my list. This is mine. These are my opinions. I'm not trying to make a list to make you happy. I'm not trying to make a list to make critics happy. My top 5 is not Led Zeppelin, The Who, The Beatles, The Rolling Stones, yada, yada, yada. It is not. It's my personal favorites of all time. So if you want to criticize it, that's fine. You make your own list, and it's not for me to criticize your list. Critics would, those arrogant buttheads, but I would not. So without further ado, let's start off with the honorable mentions. Some of the bands, again, this is not scientific. I did the best I could. Honorable mentions. Just rattle off some of these bands. Boston, Chickenfoot, David Bowie. Yes, David Bowie did not make the cut. The Fix, Huey Lewis and the News, The Kinks, Little River Band, Kansas, Grand Funk Railroad, Creedence Clearwater Revival, and the Greg Kihn Band were all near misses to make it into my top 100. All right, starting off at 100. It is a tie. I sold out just a little bit. Technically, we've got 101. At 100, Y&T tied with Steel Panther. At 99, The Guess Who. At 98, Honeymoon Suite. New Girl Now, one of the greatest rock songs of all time. At 97, Kings of Leon. Probably an unpopular pick among the die-hard classic rock fans out there, but I've seen them in concert. They're much, much better than you would think. At 96, The Wallflowers. At 95, Ozzy Osbourne. Some of you might think that's low. I don't think Ozzy has put out anything good in a long, long time. But I will never forget the impact Blizzard of Oz had on me. 94, April Wine. Underrated. 93, Atlanta Rhythm Section. ARS, again, vastly underrated. 2 phenomenal songs in their catalog. Imaginary Lover, So Into You, but plenty of other good stuff. 92, The Doors. Jim Morrison, one of the greatest rock singers of all time. 91, Bruce Hornsby. Bruce Hornsby was a lot higher up on my list when I did it back in 2017 originally. He has put out garbage. I'm sorry, garbage since 2017. He plummeted in my list. I believe originally he was roughly around 60. He dropped 30 spots. Another band, another performer that dropped because of bad output over the last decade or so is Matchbox 20. I had Matchbox 20 on this list at number 28 originally. They are now down at number 90 because of how unimpressive their last 2 albums have been. It's a tightrope, kids. It's a trick. It's very tricky. Tricky. Fine line you're walking here with me. Number 89. You can argue they only had one great album. I would say they had 2 or 3. If you count the soundtrack to Trick or Treat, that would be Fastway. New band at number 88. Of course, I've talked about them a lot over the first 99 episodes of The Fortress. That would be Rival Sons. 87, the aforementioned Eagles. Again, while they are greedy jerks, I cannot deny the fact they have some unbelievable songs. 86, the Doobie Brothers. 85, Leonard Skinner. 84, Bob Seger and the Silver Bullet Band. 83, ELO, the Electric Light Orchestra. 82, one of the top 3 or 4 female voices in rock history, Pat Benatar. 81, get ready to get upset with me. 81, Led Zeppelin. At 80, going to see them in concert here within the next 6 or 7 weeks, I believe, if not sooner. The Offspring, finally, they get taken off the bucket list. 79, Roger Daltrey, Pete Townsend, The Who. At 78, ZZ Top. 77, Guns N' Roses. Again, I know there's people out there having aneurysms over my list right now with some of these names I'm throwing here back in the 70s and the 80s. Then finally wrapping up the first 25 on my list of the top 100 rock performers of all time, Warrant. The original version with the late, great Janie Lane. So there you go. That is your first taste, your first 25, of course, counting down from 100 to number 1 of my top 100. As of today, July the 14th, 2023, my top 100 rock performers of all time. Next segment, we will knock out 75 through 51. But of course, Breakdown is all about new music. So I unfortunately am going to tell you most of the new songs I'm reviewing this week are not all that great. Well, I'll take that back. A mixed bag, let's put it that way. There's one song in particular that's just so atrocious that could be one of the worst songs by an artist I think I've ever heard in my life. So, without further ado, because we've got more ado coming, more self-congratulations on the 100th episode. Quick promo break. We will be right back with Breakdown. Thank you so much for tuning in to the Fortress of Rock podcast with me, the Maestro, Kevin Crane. Of course, that was segment 1, The News of the World, our tribute to Freddie Mercury and Queen, where we look back at the past week in rock and roll and all the news and all the controversies that you deserve to know about. Next up is the heart of the show, the meat and potatoes, Breakdown, where we are going to review all the new songs, all the new albums, all the new concert tours, the shows that I've seen personally. Stay tuned for that. Of course, we're now available on Spotify, Anchor, Apple, Stitcher, Castbox, Google, Pocket Cast, and Radio Public, wherever you listen to your favorite podcast. Hang out, kids. We'll be right back. All right, everybody, welcome back. Segment 2 here of the Fortress of Rock here on July the 14th, 2023. Celebrating the 100th episode of The Fortress, we will resume our countdown of my personal top 100 rock performers of all time in just a few minutes, but let us get into Breakdown, our tribute to Tom Petty and the Heartbreakers. I wonder if they'll show up on this list later on. Of course, if you didn't notice, shame on me, but it's just, again, my opinion. I didn't even have Queen in my honorable mentions. There's a little spoiler for you. Queen didn't make the hot 100, the top 100 for the Maestro. I know. Boo, Maestro. How can you do that? How can you not have Queen in your top 100? Overplayed. vastly overplayed and a little bit overrated. I was thinking about that during the break, thinking about, of course, News of the World being our tribute to Queen. But have no fear, Tom Petty will be coming up as we have 75 acts to go. But 3 songs here in breakdown to review. I don't know where to go. I don't know what to start with. Let's start off with, yes, more Dolly Parton. I don't know why I feel the need to continue to delve into these songs from her upcoming album, Rockstar. I'm torn. I've told you guys, I'm torn with Dolly Parton. I admire the fact that she is charismatic. Everybody loves Dolly. The fake, the humble brag, oh, I don't deserve to be in the Rock Hall of Fame, but if I get in, I'll do a rock album. And sure enough, she did. She has. And we've reviewed a couple songs already. The Rob Halford song, of course, here recently. Uncomfortable, borderline embarrassing. Now we get something a little bit more in line, should I say, with Dolly, her skills, a song that maybe she fits better with. This is the first cover song released from her upcoming album. The first few were originals. Dolly Parton and the great Ann Wilson of Heart. Again, spoiler alert, Heart didn't make it either. Yikes! But Ann Wilson is one of the greatest, along with Pat Benatar, one of the greatest rock female voices of all time. So I was a little bit leery here. I'm like, oh boy, how is Dolly going to stand up? When I heard it was duet, how is Dolly going to compare to Ann Wilson, the great Ann Wilson, on an Ann Wilson classic with Heart? Not bad. Not bad. I will say the song itself, and there's a little bit of a change up about 2/3 of the way through the song. They changed the song up a little bit, found it very interesting. I was worried Dolly would not be able to hold her own against Ann Wilson, but Dolly does a pretty good job. I'll give her this. She does a pretty good job. Definitely close to an A for effort. And definitely much better than her with Rob Halford. Again, better fit for her here on a remake of Magic Man. I will say this, check it out. Check this one out. This is more along the lines of what I expected from her album with the cover songs. And of course, this is a really good fit for her, pairing with another great female singer. So Magic Man comes off, believe it or not, pretty good for Dolly Parton, along with, of course, the great Ann Wilson. Now, you guys know I've been jumping around with this Peter Gabriel situation. Still don't know when the album I.O. is coming out. I believe now we are up to 6 songs out, 6 singles. I've reviewed some of them. I've skipped some of them. But I decided the latest one, so much, I was going to go ahead and review. I know I'm going to have to play catch up with 2 that I missed. Just put the album out already. Let me just review the whole album, Peter, for the love of God. The latest release from IO is So Much. And again, he does these light side, dark side mixes. So right now, the only one available is the dark side mix from what I've seen. But this is a very somber, piano driven meditation on old age, mortality. And I liked it. Lyrically, it is very, very solid. Peter Gabriel's voice for this particular style sounds great. Again, this is not the guy who wore flower suits with Genesis. This is not the freaky deaky Peter Gabriel. This is the Peter Gabriel that we always get glimpses of. This is the performer we can relate to. This is really a gorgeous song, an absolutely gorgeous song. And again, put the whole album out. I've really been impressed with the 4 songs I've listened to so far. And So Much did not disappoint me. So Much, again, I'm older, so maybe I can relate to it more. But for a mellow song, relatable song for those of us from the classic rock era, So Much is pretty damn good. I encourage you to check this one out. This is my strong review of the week. This is the strong recommendation. Check out Peter Gabriel's So Much. Some of you won't like it because you gotta rock all the time. No, you don't. There are times when you can mellow out, take it easy. Eagles, we mentioned them in the last segment a couple times. Now we get to the really, really huge, big disappointment of the week. Talking to a friend of mine at work today, and we were talking about guilty pleasure music from when we were growing up. He's roughly my age, so that mid 80s, guys weren't allowed to like certain bands, certain acts. They weren't at least supposed to acknowledge it. And I said I had 3 guilty pleasures in terms of music back in the 80s. Now, of course, you guys know I unabashedly discuss disco, so why would I be ashamed of anything I listened to in the 90s if I'm not ashamed to talk about Casey and the Sunshine Band and Donna Summer and the Village People? Well, nobody ever said that by the time I got to high school, I was talking about those bands. I liked them when I was young enough where it didn't really matter in social circles. You get into high school, you get into cliques, trying to impress people. You never told anybody you liked Duran Duran, George Michael and Wham, or Rick Springfield. Well, of course, last week we reviewed She Walks with the Angels, and I told you it's overblown, it's overproduced, it's a little much for me. Can't really recommend it. But I knew he'd release 2 songs from his upcoming album, Automatic. Wow. The title track, Automatic, is something else. You want to talk about trying too hard. This is the most bizarre, terrible change of pace for an artist I respected that I think I possibly have ever heard. I mean, it is down there. I don't want to say up there. It is down there with the likes of U2, Zeropa. It's just Automatic. I don't know what he's trying to do. Is it rap? Is it hip hop? He's trying to rhyme every word he possibly can to make himself sound cool, even though it makes the lyrics nonsensical. There are interesting acoustic guitar breaks throughout the song. The one highlight of an otherwise train wreck of a song. Stay Away from Automatic by Rick Springfield. And after hearing the first two singles, the first two releases, I say, just stay away from Rick Springfield right now. Oh my God. Stay away. If this is what that album is going to sound like over 20 songs, oh, you want to talk about it. Nauseating, headache inducing music. Automatic is abysmal. And I'm a little bit ashamed and embarrassed now, again, revisiting my feelings from the 80s. This is the guy that gave us awesome songs like Jesse's Girl and Don't Talk to Strangers, Affair of the Heart, Celebrate Youth. I still listen to his greatest hits to this day, pull it out once or twice a year, because there is so much good stuff. His remake of Sammy Hagar's I've Done Everything for You. I mean, he has an unbelievable group of hit songs, popular songs from the 80s that you can't deny how well they're done. His guitar work is fantastic. But what is this? What is this? Automatic. She Walks with the Angels. What is this he's trying to do to us? Rick, you're embarrassing yourself. And on that note, why don't we resume the countdown of the Maestro's 100 greatest rock performers of all time here on the 100th episode of The Fortress of Rock. We left off at 76 with Warrant, 75, Hall & Oates. Hall & Oates, for a span of what, 4 or 5 years, were the hottest duo, the hottest, arguably, performers in the world. Hit after hit after hit after hit. And this, of course, not even respecting the hit songs they had when they started out originally in the 70s with songs like Rich Girl and Sarah Smile. Then they became a behemoth of the MTV era. Never get enough credit. Hall & Oates, 75. Foreigner, going to see them next weekend, along with a band who will be up later on in the countdown. Foreigner at 74. Foreigner did damage to themselves, in my opinion, with I Want to Know What Love Is. If you put out a terrible power ballad, it's going to ding you in these ratings. 73, another example of that. Aerosmith. The sellout ballads destroyed them for me. I of course acknowledge their early, fantastic music from the 70s, and of course the resurgence, especially the album Pump. But I cannot forgive them for some of those god-awful power ballads. 72, another great duo, Simon and Garfunkel. 71, the Beatles. I always thought they were overrated. 70, the Rolling Stones. This one was tough for me. I toyed with pushing them higher because they do have a lot of great songs. But again, some of the stuff that the critics Fawn Over, Exile on Main Street. Oh, one of the greatest albums of all time. No, it's not. No, it's not. Not even close. But see, I'm the type of guy who doesn't understand why the critics destroy an album in their later years, like Dirty Work. I thought Dirty Work was a great album. Stones at 70, Neil Diamond at 69. Wish I had gotten to see him live. Neil Diamond, what a catalog of songs. 68, The Red Rocker, Sammy Hagar. 67, The Scorpions. 66, Dokken. 65, Rush. 64, my aforementioned buddy. When I talked about Cheap Trick in the first segment, he won't be happy about this, but he should be, considering who I put Cheap Trick ahead of. Cheap Trick at 64. 63, a new addition to the list. This shouldn't come as a shock to any of you, but 63, Mammoth WVH. Yes, I'm basing it on an album and a half right now. 62, U2. Again, talking back to that Rick Springfield review, U2 would be much higher on this list if they hadn't taken their creative detour, quote unquote, with Zooropa and Pop. Miserable failures. 61, The Police. Probably would have been a lot higher if they had actually stuck together and put out more music. But of course, the ego of Sting wouldn't allow that to happen. At 60, I give you Billy Joel. Love Billy Joel. But again, you're still going to see in this area of my list acts, performers, bands that made a misstep. An Innocent Man, huge hit. Monster album. I'm sure he doesn't regret it for a second. Musically, an awkward detour in my opinion. 59, we got 3 albums from this supergroup, and they were fantastic. 59 is Chris Cornell and everybody from Rage Against the Machine except the irritating Zach De La Rocha. Yes, Audioslave at 59. 58, Cinderella. 57, Metallica. 56, one of the bands early on in my life that drew me into rock and roll, so I have a very near and dear place in my heart for this band. But musically, I can really only put them at 56. That would be the mighty Kiss. 55, REO Speedwagon. At 54, Poison. At 53, the Dave Matthews Band. At 52, this is another one of those bands that I dropped big time over the last 6 years, mainly because when I saw them live, they were irritating and underwhelming, and Billy Joe Armstrong needs to shut up about politics. Green Day dropped from 22 in 2017 to 52 here on my latest list. And then finally, wrapping up the first half of our countdown, going to see them in concert for the first time ever here in about a month and a half. That would be Nuno Betancourt, Gary Cherone, and Extreme at 51. All right, we're halfway done with the countdown on the 100th episode. The 100 greatest rock performers of all time, in the humble opinion of the Maestro. But you know what comes next, and we're not changing it up. Doc Brown, shaking his head, does not like my list. I figure pretty much nobody but me likes my list, but that's okay. But I've got Doc Brown under contract in perpetuity. So he's stuck driving me through the rock and roll time stream each and every Friday night as we look back in rock history, birthdays, anniversaries, classic moments in rock history. Another promo break, and we will be hitting the rock and roll time stream in I Wanna Go Back. All right, now that we've looked at the current state of music in our breakdown segment, it is time to climb into the DeLorean and travel back in time to look back at moments in rock and roll history, birthdays, deaths, anniversaries of song and album releases. It is time for I Wanna Go Back, our tribute to Eddie Money. Stay tuned. And as always, we're on Spotify, Anchor, Apple, Stitcher, Castbox, Google, Pocket Cast, and Radio Public, anywhere where you listen to your favorite podcasts. Doc Brown and I are in the rock and roll DeLorean. We have lowered the drawbridge, heading out of the Fortress of Rock, firing up the car to 1.21 gigawatts, heading into the rock and roll time stream as we do each and every Friday night. It is time for I Wanna Go Back, our tribute to the late, great Eddie Money. Unfortunately, Eddie Money wasn't really even close to making my top 100, but still love Eddie Money. Birthdays, anniversaries of classic album releases, and moments in rock history coming up in just a minute. But first, this is the time each and every Friday night where I have to take care of some business. First up, got to let you know where you can find the Fortress of Rock. You found it somewhere, obviously, but you have options and choices. You can find the Fortress on Spotify, Google, Radio Public, Pocket Casts, Apple, Overcast, Castbox, Amazon Music, Audible, iHeartRadio, and unfortunately for only about 6 more weeks, Stitcher. Do not forget to check out the Facebook page. Of course, we've already posted the latest weekend rock project for you. Did it just before we started taping here. This weekend, Wimbledon wraps up. Of course, arguably the most famous tennis tournament of the year. So we figured, give us your favorite rock songs featuring the words game, set, or match. Not love. No, you clever kids out there, not love. Too easy. Too easy. So game, set, or match. I went with Audio Slave's Set It Off for my initial choice. And of course, every Sunday is New Music Sunday. I will post a video clip off of YouTube at some point in time in the first half of the day on Sunday for you to enjoy. Most likely a song we have discussed or will discuss here on the Fortress of Rock. And there were some new songs that popped today. If there are accompanying videos, I can imagine one of these songs being my choice for this coming Sunday. All right. Since we're going to do the countdown here, and as we get deeper into the countdown of the top 100 rock performers of all time, I'm going to end up embellishing more and more because I'm going to be more and more passionate about the picks higher up as we get closer to number one. So, the rock gods decided July the 14th, not really much going on in the history of rock and roll. A few things we'll talk about here, but we'll have plenty of time to get into more detail on numbers 50 through 26 in our countdown. Start off with a few birthdays. July the 14th, 1987. Dan Reynolds, frontman for Imagine Dragons. My daughter dragged me to see Imagine Dragons once. They weren't bad. I can imagine some parents going through a lot worse at some of these other bands that their daughters or their sons want them to take them to. So all in all, I have respect, not much more than that, but a respect for Imagine Dragons. Happy birthday to Dan Reynolds. Going all the way back, July the 14th, 1952, Bob Casale, one of the integral members of Devo. And then finally, we're really going back, all the way back to July the 14th, 1912, the birthday for the folk legend, Woody Guthrie. Now, of course, don't forget that my ideas for a lot of these historical moments and birthdays that we discuss, as well as some of the news headlines that we bring up in segment 1, News of the World. I'm a savant when it comes to music, but I'm still not that good. I need some help, so my help comes from ultimateclassicrock.com, thisdayinmusic.com, and the Van Halen News Desk. Opinions, especially in this episode, as I talk about the 100 greatest rock performers of all time, the opinions on that list, the opinions, the embellishments on the headlines of the week, and these historical rock and roll moments, that's all me. Mine alone. My viewpoints, my opinions. Couple anniversaries. You know how much I love Pink Floyd. Ugh, note sarcasm. I will admit that the movie of The Wall was interesting. Now, I haven't seen it in a long, long time, but I do recall that it was at least interesting, which is better than a lot of the garbage that's coming out of Hollywood. I'm not shedding a tear for the actor strike, the writer strike. AI could probably do better. But the movie, Pink Floyd's The Wall, premiered on July the 14th, 1982 in London, England. We talked about disco, guilty pleasure music in the last segment when we were talking about Rick Springfield. July the 14th, 1979, the awesome, gorgeous Donna Summer, the Queen of Disco, held down not only the number one spot on the singles chart in the US, but the number one spot on the album chart with Bad Girls, the song and the album. Love Donna Summer. Love to love her. Oh. And then finally, July the 14th, 1967, The Who began their first full North American tour in Portland, Oregon. Now, they were openers, supporting act for Herman's Hermits on 55 dates on this tour, but still historic. On this day in 1967, The Who, first North American tour starting in Portland, Oregon. All right, as I mentioned, we're going to get more and more embellishment here as we get into the big guns. In this segment, we will do 50 through 26. My list of the greatest performers in rock history. Starting off at number 50, the other band I'm going to see here in a week. Along with Foreigner, that would be Loverboy. I just have a soft spot in my heart for them. They are one of those 4 or 5 performers, 4 or 5 bands from the early 80s that I grew up with, big in high school. Get Lucky, one of my favorite albums of all time. Loverboy doesn't get the credit they deserve just as a straight, hard-rocking band with catchy songs, well-done, well-written songs. Awesome band. At 50, Loverboy. At 49, Godsmack. Just not the biggest fan of their last few releases, but they're not terrible. But they don't have the anger, the fire, the energy of that initial release, that first album. But Godsmack is still, they've been around for what, 2 decades at least? And they're still rocking, they're still solid. Another band I will be seeing live this year. At number 48, Journey. Again, Open Arms hurts their ranking. The most abysmal power ballad of all time. 47, The Smithereens. 46, another great vocalist, one of the best of all time. Doesn't get the credit he deserves, only really known for Wicked Game to the casual fan. Chris Isaak. Number 45, REM. Another band that suffered in my rankings, not from 2017 to 2023, but before that. If I had hypothetically done this list 15 years ago, 20 years ago, REM would have probably been higher, but their last 3 or 4 albums, again, disappointing. But still, their catalog is good enough to put them at number 45 on my list. 44, Southern Rock, making another appearance after we, of course, mentioned Leonard Skinner at 85. 38 Special comes in at number 44. The album, Wild-Eyed Southern Boys, again, an all-time classic, in my opinion. 43. I'm trying to forgive them for the mess that their live shows have been over the last decade. But the music, the albums are undeniable. Motley Crue comes in at number 43. At number 42, Judas Priest. At number 41, the original incarnation only lasted for 3 studio albums, but 3 ridiculously good studio albums. 41 is Skid Row. At number 40, Styx. At number 39, The White Stripes. At number 38, one of the top 3 guitar players of all time. Another band kind of like the Police. I would have liked to have seen them stick together and put out some more music, some more original content. but Mark Knopfler wanted to go solo and find his own way. And just like Sting, his solo work is not nearly as good as the work when he had official band members around him. Guys like Pick Withers and John Illsley. By the way, I am going to start reading John Illsley's book that he put out about a year and a half ago about Dire Straits. So eventually, some point this year, you'll get a book review here on the Fortress of Rock. But Dire Straits comes in at number 38. And again, greatest band name of all time. 37, Def Leppard. 36, AC/DC. Now we get some curveballs. Number 35. Again, only a handful of albums. But their debut album, phenomenal. And they're back out on tour this year. I don't know if it's wrapped up yet or they still got a couple dates left, but Zebra. Yes, who's behind the door? Zebra. I just loved Zebra. And this is what you're going to start seeing now on this list. Some of these bands you're going to go, who? What? Who? Because some of these bands are personal favorites of mine. That's why I said this is not a list for critics. Speaking of which, at number 34, The Hives. New album coming, of course, little over a month from now, I believe, is the release date for the death of Randy Fitzsimmons. Ultra high energy, clever, funny. The Hives at number 34. A band that took a bit of a tumble from 2017 to 2023 on this list. They were number 19 on this list back in 2017. Some weak albums here recently have dropped them to number 33. They are on the concert agenda for this year. 33, Nickelback. 32, the Gin Blossoms. Kind of hard not to have the Gin Blossoms high up on this list, considering, in my opinion, New Miserable Experience is, if not the greatest album, one of the greatest albums ever made. Just ridiculously good from beginning to end. Of course, there's the tragic backstory. Look it up. I know we've talked about it here in the past on the show. But that's what fuels the balance, the darkness between the party and the inner turmoil that you feel in the lyrics. Just an unbelievable band, especially on that album. Gin Blossoms 32. Number 31, a new band. I have touted this band along with Rival Sons here over the last couple years on the Fortress. The Black Moods. Open for a band that's coming up later on in the countdown. And I was transfixed. I was like, this band is unbelievable. So don't forget to be there for the opening act, because even though 9 out of 10 of them are underwhelming or not that good or outright suck, the 10th one, 1 out of 10, will change your life musically. Number 30, hoping to see them this year. At number 30, Pearl Jam. At number 29, Tom Petty and the Heartbreakers. At number 28, Genesis. At number 27, the first rock concert I ever saw featured this man. At number 27, Billy Squier. 26, to wrap up Now we're 3/4 of the way through. Even though I'm not a fan of his current ticket pricing, the dynamic ticket pricing through Ticketmaster, he's become greedy like Don Henley, but you can't deny the greatness of the music. Bruce Springsteen at 26. One more segment left, 25 performers to go. I'm the Maestro. I'll be right back. Well, we hope you enjoyed our trip back in time, looking back at the anniversaries, the classic moments in rock and roll history. But of course, the DeLorean works both ways. So now we have to move forward. The last segment here, as always, on the Fortress of Rock with me, the Maestro Kevin Crane. Spotify, Anchor, Apple, Stitcher, Castbox, Google, Pocket Casts, Radio Public, wherever you listen to your favorite podcasts. It's all about the future. What's coming out here in the next month or two? What songs? What albums? What concert tours? That's why we call it Wrap It Up. Thanks to the fabulous Thunderbirds. Thanks to you for hanging out. Here comes our final segment. All right, everybody. Fourth and final segment here. We are going to do the final 25, the top 25 on my list of the greatest rock performers of all time. I apologize. I kind of rushed through the ending there in segment 3, so I'm going to jump back and embellish a little bit on a few of those performers and acts. I was about ready to have a massive coughing fit and had just enough left in me to get through number 26, Bruce Springsteen. But first, before we do that, we're not breaking format. Segment 4, as always, is Wrap It Up, where we discuss new music, concerts, songs, albums that we're going to be talking about here over the next few weeks and months here on the Fortress of Rock. Now, you guys know I've been touting the fact we are getting ever closer to 2 straight months of concert reviews. And that will begin with the July 28th episode. Starting July the 28th, that Friday night, we will begin 2 straight months of concert reviews each and every week in the breakdown segment. And in 2 weeks, it will be, if you listened to the podcast here earlier, you listened to my countdown. I made no bones about it, didn't try to hide it. Foreigner was number 74. Loverboy was number 50. That double bill, Foreigner and Loverboy, we will have our review here on the farewell tour for Foreigner. That's coming up in 2 weeks on the July 28th episode. And that will kick off what I like to call the 2023 Live Festival of Rock. Next week, in Breakdown, we are going to review the 40th anniversary of the Starfleet Project. Past episodes, we've talked about this. This was a casual type of get-together, almost a supergroup, never quite fully formed, featuring the likes of Brian May, guitarist for Queen, Alan Gratzer, drummer for REO Speedwagon, and of course the late, great Edward Van Halen. Now this reissue that they're putting out, it features interviews. It's not a full-fledged, official, cohesive album per se. But we're going to give it a listen and let you know what we think next week in Breakdown here on the Fortress of Rock. And then eventually we're going to get back into, in terms of albums, we will get back into Smashing Pumpkins, Autumn, listen to Acts 2 and 3, Hopefully a lot better than Act 1 was, because, of course, after listening to Act 1, the first CD of the 3 CD set, we had to take time off. But, of course, we're going to see Smashing Pumpkins live. It's going to be one of those reviews we're talking about over a 2-month span. And I can safely say in the top 25, Billy Corgan and company do not make an appearance. So we've got concerts, starting with Foreigner and Loverboy in 2 weeks. We've got Starfleet, Smashing Pumpkins. In terms of songs, the Struts have a new song out, Too Good at Raising Hell. We will give that a whirl and have a review for you in the coming weeks here on The Fortress. Dirty Honey, also with a new song, Won't Take Me Alive. We've talked about Peter Gabriel. We skipped ahead and reviewed the gorgeous, understated So Much here this week in Breakdown, but we've got to go back and catch up because we have not reviewed Road to Joy or Four Kinds of Horses yet. So we'll play catch up with Peter Gabriel and maybe find out when the whole I.O. album is coming out. We've also talked about maybe going back and revisiting the Pretenders. I've never been a huge fan of the Pretenders. You guys know I have railed on the fact, not so much that they're in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, but who they're in before. Again, I give you the litany. I give you Styx, REO Speedwagon, Boston, Foreigner. All should have been in well ahead of the Pretenders. New album coming out. 2 songs currently available. Let the Sun Come In and I Think About You Daily. So, why not? We'll try to review the latest from Chrissie Hynde and her random group of backing musicians. And then finally, the best I saved for last. The 3rd single from The Hives. Yes, number 34 on my list of the greatest rock performers of all time. New album coming out here soon. The 3rd single just released today. Rigor Mortis Radio. That will be probably next week, I would imagine. I tend to review stuff I love, and I've been looking forward to a lot quicker than other things. So the Hives will jump the line, most likely. So there you go. Songs, Struts, Pretenders, Peter Gabriel, Dirty Honey, and the Hives. So let us wrap this bad boy up. Let us finish up the top 25 on my list of the top 100 rock performers of all time in honor of the 100th episode of The Fortress of Rock here on July the 14th, 2023. First off, thank everybody who listens each and every week, even those of you who listen occasionally. I do this for fun. I love talking about music, even if it's into a microphone. I can process the fact that I'm talking to people out there. I don't know who you are, but you're awesome nonetheless, and thank you. Number 25 on my list of the top 100 rock performers of all time is my second favorite guitarist, the second greatest guitar player, in my opinion, of all time, the late, great Stevie Ray Vaughan. At number 24, they got too much abuse from Beavis and Butthead. They turned things around. got better, sharper at songwriting, took themselves more seriously, and over their last 3 albums have become, in my opinion, a very, very formidable force in hard rock. Kip Winger, Reb Beach, Winger at number 24. At number 23, Hootie and the Blowfish, Cracked Rear View, one of the greatest albums of all time. I know I say that a lot, but think about it. You're allowed 50 or 60 greatest albums of all time. In Cracked Rear View, Darius Rucker, again, a great, great singer, one of the top 10 to 15, in my opinion, of all time. Hootie and the Blowfish at number 23. Now, I want to go back. I promised I was going to go back, make some comments about a few of the artists that I rushed through at the end of last segment, and I'm going to say the same kind of things. When I go back and look at number 28 with Genesis, Abacab, one of my all-time favorite albums. 27, Billy Squier, Don't Say No. Again, one of the greatest albums of all time. And Bruce Springsteen at number 26, The River. Double album. Not a weak spot on it. And it's a double album. All right, Hootie and the Blowfish at number 23. Soul Asylum at number 22. Dave Pirner, one of the greatest undervalued songwriters in rock history. Lyrically stunning, almost a poet. Sense of humor, sarcasm. Soul Asylum, number 22 on my list. Now we're going to start to see grunge even more prevalent. We had Pearl Jam back at 30. At number 21, Alice in Chains. Initially, I did not like Alice in Chains. I thought their first album wasn't that good. I didn't think their lead-off hit, Man in the Box, was all that in a bag of chips. I saw them open for Van Halen. They were not impressive. Then they got better. They got tighter. Even with Lane Staley's drug problems, they somehow managed to put together better album and better album after better album. And then, after Lane Staley died, Jerry Cantrell resurrected the band. And the 2 albums they have put out in the latest incarnation of Alice in Chains have been great. Alice in Chains, number 21. Now, a band that moved up big time, and this is recency biased. I admit it. If we had done this list 6 months ago, this band probably wouldn't have moved up as much as they did. But because they just put out an album a couple months ago that is my front runner right now for album of the year for 2023. Now, of course, they have a background of putting out fantastic music before this, but it had been a while. They moved up from number 33 on my list in 2017 to number 20. Queens of the Stone Age. If you have not listened to their new album, In Times New Roman, it's just primo to me. A lot of critics are saying it's the same old QOTSA. There's nothing wrong with it. There's nothing wrong with that. If you do something incredibly well, why stop? Let's tell LeBron James, stop playing basketball, go do needlepoint. We talked about U2 and the massive failures, in my opinion, that Zooropa and Pop were. Billy Joel's An Innocent Man. Queens of the Stone Age just do what they do, and they do it so well. At number 19, probably the most underrated arena rock band of the 80s. I still think they're massively popular. I've seen documentaries recently on them. They have a small but die-hard core fan base, myself included. The greatest song of all time, Fight the Good Fight. Number 19 is Triumph. Number 18, a band that tumbled in my rankings. Because, again, like Queens of the Stone Age, if we'd made this list 6 months ago, they'd probably still be in the top 10. But because, and I don't understand how everybody loves the new album, but here we are, is the worst Foo Fighters album ever. Foo Fighters dropped from number 8 in 2017 to 18th on my current list. Number 17, a band I got into very late in life. In my 30s, I finally discovered, when it comes to Southern rock, you're not doing better than the Allman Brothers Band. At number 16, they were not a fluke. They were not just a manufactured television band. The impressive behind-the-scenes list of songwriters, the impressive talent that the four of them were, Mickey, Mike, Peter, and Davey. They were better than the Beatles, and they were a lot better than the Beatles. And I will say that till the grave. Oh, the sublime brilliance of Yellow Submarine. I'll take Pleasant Valley Sunday any day of the week over half of the garbage the Beatles put out when they were on drugs. The Monkees are number 16 on my list. Just saw this guy recently in concert. He's become bitter, mean-spirited as he gets older over the last couple decades, but he's still the man. You cannot deny his run from the late 70s into the 90s with albums like Scarecrow, American Fool, The Lonesome Jubilee. I still refer to him as John Cougar. John Cougar Mellencamp comes in at number 15. At number 14, arguably the greatest hair metal band of the 80s, Out of the Cellar, Round and Round. Stephen Pearcy had the vocal machinations, the vocal stylings that fit the band's name perfectly. He sounded sleazy. He sounded oily and greasy. He sounded like a guy who should be singing for the band Rat. At number 13, grunge again. Grunge was the last great musical movement, the last great musical fad of all time. Number 13, Chris Cornell, who I've always said the greatest male rock singer ever. The late, great Chris Cornell, of course, made an appearance earlier at 59 with Audioslave. Now, of course, comes in at number 13 with Soundgarden. And how Soundgarden is not in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, again, proves what a travesty that joke of an establishment is. Now, at number 12, shockingly, I have talked about Pearl Jam. I have talked about Alice in Chains. No, I'm not talking about Nirvana. I am not a fan of Nirvana. They did not even come close to making the cut. But we just talked about Soundgarden. My favorite band from the grunge era, Stone Temple Pilots at number 12. Core, again, an all-time classic album. And Plush, one of the greatest rock songs ever. STP at number 12. Number 11, I've seen them in concert arguably more than anybody else on this list. They're rude, they're crude, but they embody the spirit of rock and roll. They're funny. Probably most well known for the Lumberjack. Lead singer Jesse James Dupree slicing up a bar stool at their live shows with a chainsaw. Yes, number 11 on my list is Jackal. Number 10 and number 9, going to get a little bit more obscure on you. Back to bands that maybe you don't know. Number 10, a band that has not put out anything for quite a while. I really don't think they're even considered active anymore. But they have a decent half dozen or so albums, give or take one or two. The lead singer, Bob Walkenhorst, you got to get used to his voice. And if you can get beyond his unique voice, you listen to the lyrics. It's a tight band. Band out of, I believe, Kansas. The Rainmakers. I know, under the radar, but the Rainmakers, give them a listen. Find them on Spotify. Let My People Go Go. Tornado of Love, Small Circles, some of their earlier small hits. The Good News and the Bad News. What an album. Probably their best album. Definitely recommend you check some of that out on Spotify or Pandora, wherever you listen to your free music. Number 9. Now, this is a band I've talked about. Saw them recently in concert a few years ago. Roger Clyne and the Peacemakers are number 9. Phenomenal live performance. Roger Clyne could actually put more emotion and energy into his shows than anybody I've ever seen. Of course, he was the leader of the Refreshments, who I wanted to put on this list. I really wanted to. But I was kind of trying to. Yes, I made an exception for Mammoth WVH, but the Refreshments only put out 2 albums. So as much as it kills me, because their 2 albums, Fizzy Fuzzy, Big and Buzzy, and The Bottle and Fresh Horses, are 2 of my favorite albums of all time. I could not put the Refreshments on the list because it's just not enough. You got to give me a little bit more than 2 albums to qualify. But Roger Clyne and the Peacemakers, Roger Clyne went on to form his own band, I guess, a new version with himself as the leader. Now, they've had, 7, 8 albums? They haven't put out anything in a while. Last was Native Heart. Again, great lyrics, funny, humorous, insightful, intelligent lyrics, powerful live band. Number 9, Roger Clyne and the Peacemakers. Number 8, a band that moved way up in my rankings based on their last couple of albums and the fact that I finally got to see them live. And they were everything that they were propped up to be. This band moved up from number 36 on my list in 2017 to number 8 now. Miles Kennedy, Mark Tremonti, Alter Bridge, number 8 on my list. Now, I will tell you this. At this point, that's it for changing. Alter Bridge was the last move, the last shift in this list. My top 7 did not change from 2017 to 2023. All right, so the top 7. Again, has not changed. Number 7 is The Knack. Criminally underrated. Critics abused them when Get the Knack became a huge hit, and of course, My Sharona became one of the most popular songs of all time. The long version of My Sharona with the killer guitar solo. One of the greatest guitar solos ever. Gotta listen to that. Don't listen to the radio edit. But the albums that followed were overlooked. And again, like Triumph, The Knack has a small but loyal core following, myself included. Again, I recommend you go back and listen to some of The Knack's other work outside of Get the Knack. Do not ignore Get the Knack. You should own Get the Knack. One of the top albums ever in the Maestro's collection. Number 6, they can be political. They can meld a little tiny bit of hip hop into their music, a little tiny bit of funk and soul, but they are a hard rockin' band and one of the best of all time. Not just known for cult of personality. Just like The Knack, one big hit does not define the band. Yes, I'm talking about Corey Glover, Vernon Reid, Living Color at number 6. At number 5, a band that I initially did not like all that much when their first album came out. I thought they're a little too weird, a little too folksy, a little too quirky. And then I started to realize with the second album how great they were, how great Adam Duritz was as a lead singer and a lyricist. Still around to this day, occasionally putting out great new music. Still great live. Counting Crows are number 5. At number 4, given the state of the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, I was just shocked. I was blown away here years ago, but not too far back, that this band got in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. Again, considering some of the bands from their era, their peers that have been overlooked. But there's no denying the fact that they are one of the all-time greats. Unfortunately, a lot of the core members of the band have passed away. Benjamin Orr, Rick Ocasek. But the Cars, unbelievable. The first 2 albums especially, but you can't overlook Panorama is just such an underrated album because it came on the heels of these 2 classic monsters in the Cars and Candio. But Panorama got overlooked, and it never, ever should have gotten short shrift. Now, of course, they had a huge comeback with Heartbeat City. Shake It Up was in there in between. The Cars, so good. So good. And the tandem of Ben Orr and Rick Ocasek trading off vocals. Hard for me to think of a band, a better band in rock history that had not one but 2 viable lead singers. The Cars are number 4. Number 3. I don't think they'll ever get in the Rock Hall of Fame, but they have some impressive records when it comes to, now, I'm not talking about records in terms of their albums. I'm talking about they had a run on the Billboard rock charts of number 1 songs that was ridiculous. Starting with Shine, going through what we call the Yellow Album, their self-titled second album, featuring December, Where the River Flows. And still to this day, they're still putting out great albums, great new music. I've seen them live probably a half a dozen times. They don't disappoint. Ed Roland and his brother, the guys in Collective Soul, probably the best example of rock and roll post-grunge. Collective Soul, number 3. Number 2, I just love Night Ranger. I don't know why. I just love them. I love the dynamic of the band with Jack Blades, Kelly Keagy. Again, like the Cars, a 1-2 punch. Jack Blades can sing, Kelly Keagy can sing, Brad Gillis, of course, on guitar. I've seen Night Ranger about half a dozen times in my life, and they don't disappoint. Going to see them again here in a couple weeks. I will have a review for you. They will be at Party Gras. But every Night Ranger album, and there's a lot of them out there, kids. I think they're in double digits now in terms of albums, studio albums. There's really not a bad one in the bunch unless you count the one where Jack Blades had left the band. That one was a mistake. That was kind of like Motley Crue with John Corabi, although they still pulled off a great song with Hooligan's Holiday. But it wasn't the same without Vince Neil. So Night Ranger had this one album, Feeding Off the Mojo, with Keagy and Gillis, and they brought in this new guy to sing. It just wasn't the same. Night Ranger, number 2. And of course you know who number 1 is. The great, the mighty Van Halen. That has not changed on my list since the early 80s. I love Van Halen. I have one tattoo. It is Van Halen, the logo from Van Halen 2. There's nothing you can say to me about Van Halen negative, because I will just poo-poo you. I will just dismiss you. Is Van Halen perfect? Nothing is perfect. Nobody, no band, no person is perfect. In fact, yesterday I heard the Hagar era song, Can't Stop Loving You. And I think I threw up in my mouth a little bit because that was a grave misstep. But they had so few of those. And I'm the guy who will stick up for 3. I'm the guy who will stick up for Gary Cherone. And I will say that album was damn good. No, it doesn't match up to the 6 classic era David Lee Roth albums, or even the first 3 in the Sammy Hagar era. But it's better than Balance. I'll tell you that. Balance is the worst Van Halen album of all time. And still, over half of that is solid. And then don't even tell me there was something wrong with the finale, the final, what turned out to be the final Van Halen album. A different kind of truth, despite the fact that a lot of it was rewritten songs from their early years. That album is killer. The only mistake they made, they never should have released Tattoo as the lead single. Never released the weakest song as the first single. But there are bands I get tired of. There are bands I get bored with. That's why AC/DC is back at number 36. I love AC/DC. Come on. But I told you guys, I don't need to hear You Shook Me All Night Long ever again in my life, because lazy classic rock radio plays that song to death. I could bring up Def Leppard's Pour Some Sugar on Me. Same thing. But for some reason, and this is why they're number one with me, I never get tired of listening to Van Halen. I never, ever get tired of it. I never, ever get tired of it. On the radio, at home, I will listen to the entire catalog, except for Balance, probably, a couple times every year. And I can't say that about any other artist that I have just named off to you in my top 100. There are certain albums that I will listen to multiple times a year from some of the other artists, but not the entire catalog, not every album. That's how much I love Van Halen. But you guys knew that. I tell you each and every week, one of my main sources for news is the Van Halen news desk. So I hope you enjoyed it. The 100th episode is now over. I have given you my current list, and it will change unless I drop dead the minute I turn this mic off and shut down this episode. This list will change. There will be ebbs, there will be flows, one way or the other, up and down. I told you some of them that happened from 2017 to 2023. If I make it another 10 years, 15 years, there will be movement. But for now, this is the list. Again, I hope you enjoyed it. Thank you for indulging me. Make your own list. Love to see you post it on the Facebook page. Share it with us. Everybody's list should be different. Everybody's list should be unique. You should have bands on there like the Rainmakers or the Black Moods. Bands that most people don't know about, but you. And they're personal to you, and you love them in part for that. That you feel like you discovered them. They're your bands. We all lay claim to Van Halen. We all lay claim to Zeppelin and the Beatles. But who's that band out there for you that you put on your list, who you lay claim to, and there's not that many other people out there who would say the same? It's time to start the next 100 episodes, starting next week. Starfleet Project, The Hives, the latest in rock and roll news, and going back in history, July the 21st in our rock and roll DeLorean. Take care, kids. I hope you have a phenomenal weekend. We will talk again in 7 days. I'm the Maestro. Love the one you're with. I'm out.